Good afternoon and welcome back to the Number One Contender Podcast, the show where your favorite nerds talk all things movie trivia schmodown. And ladies and germs, I am very excited for this week's episode. You're actually getting two Number One Contender episodes this week. We got this very exciting episode today, and then this coming Monday, March 1st, Travis and I have a breakdown of the movie trivia schmodown rule book. So tune in for that. We read it so that you don't have to. But today, we have our very first competitor interview, and game recognizes game. Y'all know what faction I have my loyalties with, and we were not sure. I mean, the last match speaks for itself, but we're not going to get into that. We're going to be talking mostly game here. We are joined by host of Forced Toast, co-host of Jedi Way with the Outlaw himself. We got Lights Out Laura Kelly on the show this week. Hello there.
Hello. How's it going, Jarod?
I am great and very excited to be talking to you this week on Number One Contender.
Thanks. I like your shirt.
Thank you very much. I liked yours during the last match, and I think it's only fitting that our first interview on Number One Contender is with a Number One Contender.
I think that fits too. Well done.
Like poetry, it rhymes. A wise man once said. So I just want to jump right into questions here. And I need to ask, after last season, I feel like you were a lot of people's favorites to win the tournament, especially after the bracket breaker that was Joseph Scrimshaw kind of bowing out a little bit early after that Herculean match with Andrew DiMolanta. How are you feeling coming out of last season? Because like I said, I think most people had you pegged to be getting to the end of the tournament and then winning the tournament.
Yeah, and that's flattering. And I that was really nice. I almost wonder if maybe that it added maybe a little bit too much pressure. I probably should have kept my eye off of people's brackets. So that's definitely a change I've sort of made this year, is I'm keeping some distance, especially from the Facebook group and things like that. But yeah, I mean, last year, it's hard to say. In retrospect, I'm really proud of my performance. I think I got 100% accuracy on my first match against Sean, and then just missed the one question against Ace. So I don't think that that's anything to scoff at. I was very disappointed, obviously. And I remember going into this match, this first match of season 8, and thinking I wonder what stupid answer I'm going to put down for what should be a really easy question. I wonder what it's going to be in this match, because it seems inevitable that that's going to happen again. And I'm very grateful it didn't, because I was feeling very confident going into this match for the most part in terms of my preparation and my study. I felt good about it. So I was really hoping that wouldn't be the case again. But yeah, it was definitely disappointing, because watching the matches after that, I get so jealous. Sometimes I think yeah, what, the schmodown and studying for these Star Wars matches is so much work. Maybe I take a year off or something at some point, but then I watch the matches that I'm not in, and I just start to get jealous and really excited to play again. So that'll never happen.
That makes a lot of sense. And, on the show itself, Travis and I have been talking a lot about the nature of the Star Wars division right now, how every season for the last 3-4 years has been this, okay, who's going to be the one to try to fight Damon? And that Travis and I both have kind of agreed that I think that that's kind of become a bad mentality to go into the division with, of just focusing on Damon, especially now that it's so broad. Star Wars isn't a division where there's maybe 2-3 matches a year, maybe 4 if it's a celebration year. So we're going into a much broader field, and I think that mentality that you just described is exactly what we've been talking about, that you have to focus on each individual match, rather than kind of running headlong into Alex. And we've seen how that has ended up for a lot of people. So yeah, I think that's interesting that like the brackets kind of had like a mind game to it, seeing that how the Scrimshaw fallout affected that. Um, okay, so I don't want to poke the bear because I don't want to get Winston after me. Nor I feel like the shirt's protection from Shannon, but I'm still not safe for good reason. So you left home at the beginning of the year. Uh, I I wish we were live streaming Travis and I watching the draft. Um, I may or may not have been a lot of profanity whenever you got drafted into swag. So what was the experience of being in Korruption? You know, the faction kind of started at the bottom, skyrocketed up top, in large part due to your performance in the tournament. Um, how was the time with and time on the way out of Korruption?
I mean, my time with them was really, I mean, it was just a hopefully not once in a lifetime, but now sort of feels like once in a lifetime. Like I came into this game the year before the first draft, not really expecting it to go anywhere. I kind of thought Star Wars Celebration was going to be like a one and done. Um, and then like, you know, taking a couple of trips out to California to play in studio and then play the live match, like that wasn't a ton of time for me to like actually get to know people in this community, like the other players, the, you know, managers. It really wasn't, it just wasn't enough time. And so when it came time to, you know, figure out what was going on with the draft, because I'm not really a sports person, I didn't really understand like what exactly was going to be involved with that. And when I got drafted, I was kind of surprised because I would never have expected a team of heels to want to pull me into something like that. But I ended up being really excited because I was like, oh, this is a new opportunity for me to come off of this loss. It's spectacular and just try to figure out a way to make this game fun and exciting for me again, because that loss hurt. You know, like if people kept telling me like, oh, you did, you know, you did great, you didn't get knocked out, like good job. I'm just like, yeah, but that's like that's not good enough for me. You know, like I'm glad that that's good enough for you. That's not good enough for me. I need to do better than that. I hold myself to a higher standard. Um, but that adds a lot of stress to it. You know, this is a stressful division. It's a lot of work to prep and play in. So it was important to me to really to find a way to make this a little bit more like loosey goosey and fun, and getting into Korruption and sort of studying their performances and their characters and thinking, okay, this could be a fun way to sort of make this interesting again for myself. And yeah, it was really fun getting to play with them. It was a great community. It's sort of like it was that sort of team feeling was really there. I feel like from the start, it just felt like a family right away. And I was really intimidated, like going into that group, and then like I still actually don't think I've ever met Mike Kalinowski in person. Like we've talked a lot over, you know, this kind of thing, but it was one of those things where I didn't know any of them. And so that was sort of intimidating the first call. And then it just got easier and easier. And they were so enthusiastic. I mean, like Mike and Chance are so enthusiastic about Star Wars, and they were so excited to like sit and quiz me on stuff. And I had a lot of fun getting to like prep them for their matches in the Star Wars section of things too. So it ended up being really fun, but it felt like it really fell into place and really became this like cohesive thing. I feel like when Adam came on board. So when we got Adam Collins, it just added this like thing nobody really felt like we never really even knew was missing. He just like completed the puzzle in this great way. So it was really fun, and it gave me this thing that I hadn't had the previous season, which was like a sort of sense of belonging. I was experiencing a lot of like imposter syndrome, I think, my first season. Maybe a lot of rookies go through that. But it was definitely the case for me in my first season, and I didn't have that as much anymore last season, which was great.
That's really sweet, and I think there's something very wholesome and ironic about, you know, the faction known for being, you know, I don't want to quite say, no, I am going to say like the super villains of the league. You know,
Yeah.
there's a couple factions. You know, the dungeon kind of has this like, you know, grungy, chaotic, neutral vibe going on, but like Korruption's where the villains hang out. And I also I again, being a colleague and a fan of what you do, and I was super excited to see you compete, and then seeing you get drafted into Korruption. At least for me, I was like, yes. It was all my ducks were in a row. I was like, cool. Favorite Star Wars competitor, favorite faction. I don't have to split loyalty anywhere. Um, that said, I think that the faction full of villains being, from all accounts, from everything I've heard, probably the most like home fuzzy feeling faction for everybody involved, I think is also hilarious. Which checks out whenever you see everybody kind of interacting. Um, how was the off season? Because it sounds like Korruption never stops. I just saw on Twitter, Shannon and Mike are kicking it on vacay, and that poor son of a bitch is watching Transformers right now on vacation. Pour one out for KO. But what was the off season like for you as an individual and as for Korruption as a whole? Because at this point, I feel like the assumption was you were staying home.
Yeah, it was my off season was really long. I mean, like I played July 1st, and then I didn't play again until last week. So it was really long for me. It was nice because I got to spend some time, really making sure that they were sort of all up to par on their Star Wars stuff, which I think they all performed really well in that category last year. So that was great. But it was. I think I took a long time off where like I sort of skipped the study sessions for a while. Star Wars, like you just need a break. I mean, after I like spend so much time watching these movies, it's the last thing I want to think about for however much time. And so for me last year, that was a really long time of really not having to put that much effort into anything. So that was kind of nice. But in terms of like the actual off season when Spectacular ended and then the draft, I don't know, it was quiet. It was one of those things where I kind of knew what was coming. I knew it was a really big long shot that I probably wouldn't be able to get back to Korruption. And it was hard. It was really hard because then I also knew at the time that I had a match coming up. And so while everybody else was taking time off and relaxing, I was like really hitting the books. And Korruption got to help me with that too, even, well knowing that I wasn't going to be back. Which was it just made it even sadder, like getting to like see them and like get back onto like our Zoom and StreamYard study sessions. Like it just got sad again. So I think we only did it a few times, but it was hard. It was just easier for me to just do it on my own because then even every time I thought about it, it got depressing. And I'm like, here I am back again where the end of the season happened and now I'm just bummed out again. And I'm thinking, last year I got this thing handed to me where I got to take the time to like reinvent myself and like write a bunch of ideas out for this character and these promos and things like that. And so this time it was a little more like quiet and having to sort of spend time in my own head, which is never good. Just kind of in this horrible anticipation of what was coming. Because I wanted to stay home. I wanted to stay with the team that gave me my first home in this community. And every piece of information that I was sort of getting behind the scenes was that there was a particular faction out there that was, if they could get me in the first round, they weren't going to let me go. And so I was really, really dreading that. And then it didn't happen. And I kind of thought like, oh, I might actually like, is there a chance I might actually make it back? Like, it was crazy. So that team ended up not drafting me at all because
I was just about to ask, is that the team you ended up with? But
no, it wasn't. Which is really interesting because I was that was a total curveball. It was a total curveball being drafted by Swag. I mean, like it just felt so out of left field for me, especially being drafted before Ace. That was when he was still out there and available, that was just like mind-blowingly confusing. So I remember thinking, they were like, they wanted players to like react, and if you can record your reaction to being drafted and send that in. And I had my camera up and ready. I kind of didn't think I was going to end up doing anything, but like there was nothing to send because I was just like, what? Like it was, I did not understand. It didn't compute at all.
Well, I'm not gonna poke around because I know that lots of people have been keeping the who was eyeing who confidential. Um, I'll have my own speculations for that. So you were saying that like you did a good bit of training leading up to your incredible match with Molly. Both of you guys, amazing performances. You did a lot of that training with Korruption then, like leading up to that point before seeing the writing on the wall. Feel free to no comment this one out of the air. Would you say that there's a little bit more responsibility for that W on Korruption than there is for Swag? Or, I mean, you also said that you kind of like, went full Ronin with it and kind of did it by yourself as well. So, like, would you put the lion's share of like the preparation that got you ready for that fight? It was an absolute fight. It was a slugfest. Would you say that a lot of the preparation that got you to that victory was from the Korruption side of things, from the Swag side of things, you being a one woman army? Like what was what would you say kind of got you there? Or is it kind of put everybody in a blender and it was all equal parts?
I'd like to say that it was sort of all in a blender, but for the most part, it was the vast majority of it was me. And that's kind of always been the case because there's always been, for the most part, one Star Wars player per team. So I've kind of always had to have that mindset of like my preparation and my study material and the like depth of things I have to go into. It's not the same as other players. So any
Hmm.
other team, any other player can really only help me so much unless they're a Star Wars player. So it's always been me. And I think that's probably like that for a lot of players in this division, is that you've always kind of been siloed in the sense that you just have to dig so much deeper into the material than the other divisions do. So at least that's what it's been for me, and that I have had kind of the same like method of studying since day one of this. I've been kind of doing the same, and even before I was doing the Schmodown, it was kind of the same stuff. Even when I was just like prepping for pub trivia, now I just have like a lot more material in my notes. But it's yeah, for the most part, I can kind of do it solo. Like if I didn't have any team at all and I was just like a random free agent in this game, like I don't know if it would have that much of a difference because so much of what I'm doing I can just do by myself.
That's an excellent point. And again, another thing that Travis and I talked about in the wake of the draft was the way that it seems like most of the factions have gone with this layout of we're going to have our proven person who's competed in this division before, and we're going to have a rookie. And that, keeping with like a Star Wars parallel, like it kind of like, I can't help but think that it has to turn into like a master and Padawan situation where you have one person who's been around long enough, or, you go dark side with the rule of two, you have somebody who's been around long enough that they can hone this rookie player. And by teaching, they're also improving themselves. That said, Swag went the opposite friggin' direction with that and went, no, I'm going to draft two heavyweights. Instead of it being like Qui-Gon and Obi-Wan, it's like, no, we're going to go Mace and Yoda.
I'll take that as a compliment.
Please do. And I'm curious as to how that affects like the vibe of Swag, because I feel like it makes sense if you have, like a Joseph Scrimshaw and a Sean Sullivan, where it's like one's been around for a hot minute, one has, done that fight with Alex. The other hasn't been around for quite as long. So he gets to develop his sea legs or space legs. And, Joseph gets to help this guy, helps to get Sean get better. And Sean helps Joseph get better by having to be on the other side of game prep. I have a hard time. It's kind of the same problem that the dungeon fell into last season, where it's like, yes, this is this great faction for the IG, except for the fact that you're all going to cannibalize each other. I can't help but feel like Swag is setting you and Ace up to cannibalize each other. Again, I'm not a player. I'm a fan. I'm a big fan, but I don't know everything. Those who can't play commentate. I have to ask how the training sessions so far and the vibe of Swag is, with the kind of statement from the outset being, we're just going to pit you two against each other. Almost. I can't help but feel like Winston went into making this decision knowing that would be the case. I have a hard time believing that he was like, yes, they're going to be hunky dory. This is going to be great. Neither is going to, and it's not this. And when I say, spotlight craving, I don't mean that in a diva way. You're both incredible players. You and Ace are both absolute tanks. However, I do think that it is absolutely fair for a veteran player who has proven their might and proven their ability to hang would be a little frustrated that they have to share it with somebody who they may or may not consider their equal, or at the very least they do consider their equal, but it's like, why are you making us share this space? If any of that is a question that you have a response to, feel free to respond, because I'm very curious as to how Swag is feeling these days.
Well, I mean, I can't really speak for the rest of the faction, but it's from my point of view, it's definitely weird. It's weird. And I'm trying to like wrap my mind around it and make it less weird, because like most of the teams have like 2 IG players and multiple singles players. Like, and especially in like Korruption. I mean, Mike and Chance played each other last year. So I'm trying to like figure out how to like reconcile this in my brain, because it's just strange, and it's just because it's just new and it's never been this way for Star Wars and having more than one player on the team. So I would love to say that like maybe we'll get there to like the where Mike and Chance play each other and it's just kind of kicking back and having fun, but it's just at this point it's just too weird and it's too new. And yeah, I mean, like, I feel like it'll eventually get there, and like, yeah, like you talked about how like Sean and Joseph can make each other stronger, and I kind of hope that that's going to be the case with us too. But it's just at this point, there's just a lot of, I kind of think it's on both sides, but I think there's a lot of hesitation on my side. I think there's a lot of hesitation on his side. I think Ace is coming off of a hard loss. And yeah, and probably like, I don't know, if maybe not going to play for a while. I don't know. I have no idea when this, what the schedule is in terms of when this tournament's going to start, but it'll be interesting to see how this year progresses. I think for all of the factions who now have 2 Star Wars players, I mean, I would love to actually like pick everybody else's brain and be like, so how are like you feeling about all of this? Is this, and I have a little bit, but I haven't reached out to everybody yet. It's just, and I mean, I think some of the teams have more than 2, which is even stranger to me. Like, it's just weird. It's a weird new year. Last year was also a weird new year. I wonder if every year is going to be like this, but at least for now, it all still is just feeling very raw and very new. And I'm just trying to come to terms with everything. And part of that is still like feeling that sort of devastation and not being back on Korruption. Everything, it just kind of still hurts a little,
And there's another similar question I want to ask, which again, shoot down if you need to, and you feel like doing so. Do you feel like, I'm going to keep making Star Wars comparisons here because it's very apropos. I kind of get the vibe of it was very early in like the newer Marvel Star Wars comics runs where Palpatine went, oh, hey, here are all these like eldritch abominations I created to maybe replace you. Kill them all or you're a dead man. I kind of get that, and not to compare Winston to Sidious, but is he doesn't seem like that much of a conniving guy, but like, which is kind of part of the problem here. What do you think that was his intent? Do you think that there's like maybe there's an idea to like maybe like, oh, you'll put fight in Ace or Ace will put fight in you? Like, do you think this very, very, very risky move of pulling you from a faction that you clearly love being in was going to have like huge payout? Like, have you been able to figure out what the strategy was there, or do you think he just saw an opportunity and took the shot, and it was kind of a heat of the moment thing where he saw an amazing Star Wars player and was banking on Ace still being around? Which again, oh, that's some gambling. I do not like to gamble, and that gave me anxiety watching it.
Yeah.
So what do you think the strategy is there? Unless you already know, and at which point, either you can or can't say, then that's your decision. But
I
do you
mean,
think
frankly, I don't know. I
no,
really
okay,
don't.
yeah.
I have no idea. And I mean, I think it was just when you look at the pool of Star Wars players that were available, it was I really am not sure. I haven't really talked about it with them, so I don't know. But if everybody was going to end up with 2 to 4 Star Wars players on their team, yeah, I truly am not sure. I guess that it was just an opportunity and he took it. I imagine there was more strategy and more planning behind the scenes than I know about, but I truly am not sure.
And that is also completely fair. So moving on here, now that you are the number one contender, um, you will be playing the winner of Dimolanta and Damon. I feel like anybody who is a gambler is going to just outright say you're going to be playing Alex Damon. However, never know what will happen. What's kind of your mode of preparation right now, knowing that there is a more likely future opponent for you, but aware of the fact that it could go either way? Like, how are you preparing for this upcoming match? Knowing that your opponent is still up in the air as to who it could be.
Well, at the moment, I'm not. I
No,
took
that
the
also
week off. So the match when we're talking now was a week ago yesterday, and I had to give myself the week off because it was an exhausting preparation for
well
that
earned.
match,
Well
especially
earned.
in the 3 days before when I was really cramming for it. But it was yeah, I'll get back into it. I actually did pull some stuff up last night while I was like sitting around eating pizza, watching TV, and I kind of flipped through some of my information. But I do plan to stay on top of it. I think at this point, like I feel like so many players are getting like very little heads up as to when they're going to be playing their matches, when they're like going to be recording them. And I feel like I just need to be prepared for that at all times. I can't prep for a Star Wars match after having not looked at anything for a month. I can't prepare in like a week. That's not at all conducive to my process. So I just need to sort of stay on top of it. I need to not relish my little off periods probably as much as I have in the past. So my plan is to really just try to, always be learning and to just stay on top of my material so that my brain doesn't just go to mush like it normally does when I'm not playing.
No, that's fair. And another thing that Travis and I have been talking about a lot that I'd love to hear your input on is the potential chaos that can stem from Damon v. Dimolanta 2. Is it now? I believe.
I don't know if they've
So
played each other one-on-one
no,
before.
I think you're right. Actually, yeah, I'm an idiot. Here I am for forgetting everything here. Um, so potentially, let's say the hunter wins. I feel like at this point, regardless of like the 3-win precedent, Alex has defended for 3 years. There's got to be an auto rematch there. So, assuming Damon wins, he wins it, he keeps the belt, immediately move on to whenever he'll be playing you. A more interesting and chaotic route would be uh, Demolanta wins, and then it goes into an auto rematch, at which point your opponent is thrown up in the air again. And you continue to just have to wait for that match to play out. And then it goes, and the belt goes in either direction. Is there what do you think the most likely outcomes are here? And is there like is there an anticipation to like bank on one or the other? Because I feel like you're too strong of a competitor and too dedicated to this that I feel like playing anybody but Alex, I feel like you would feel as though you were cheated out of, um, you know, going toe to toe with the greatest in the division. He has this proven record. He's had the belt for as long as he's had. Is there a way you'd like to see any of that shake out, or do you just want like the express ticket, like let him win, you get in there, and hopefully get that belt away from him for the first time in a century?
Yeah, no, it has been a while. I think that at this point, it's really hard for me, at least, to write Demolanta off, especially after how he performed in the tournament last season. So I said the same thing about Molly, even though I beat her before at our first match ever. We both played against each other, and I I think I came in third, she came in fourth, and I've beat Demolanta before, and but at the same time, it's just like when you miss a question in this division, like you best believe that you're gonna be really trying to make sure that you're getting up to snuff on whatever that general topic is that you missed. So it's hard to sort of bank on people's last previous performance. Um, and anticipate like how they might perform based on that. Demolanta he's a real force in this division. And I don't need to be the first to tell anybody that he's really hungry for it. So regardless of the fact that I've beat him before, I mean, I would probably be feeling just as nervous to play either one of them. Um, Now that said, coming off of the last match and knowing what I know and what I'm prepared for, I feel very confident to be going up against either of them, but I don't really feel confident for more than one over the other. They're both deadly. And I think that if this year of all years, given what this division looks like, um, I mean, I would think that this really could be the year that Damon doesn't end up with the belt. I think. Um, I would love to think that it's me, but if it's not, I think that there's still a chance that somebody could take it away from him. Um, just kind of knowing what I know about some of the other players. So I think that this is going to be an interesting year to watch it play out. I still think that Demolanta and Damon they're top tier players. I mean, that's no secret. So I don't know if I would be approaching it any differently, whether it was one versus the other.
Oh, that makes sense, and I think that what you're saying is absolutely correct. That if it's gonna be any year, it's this year. I don't know what like again this mass influx of players who seem handpicked to be you know demon fighters. It's like the whole the object of the game almost was like only Dragon Con, draft from Dragon Con, bring the people who have that like sweaty tier visual dictionary uh ammo packed. But that said, while I was getting ready and setting up in here, I was rewatching the match because I hadn't watched the YouTube version. I had watched the live stream on Patreon, but rewatching it, I all the way back to the Luminous days up to now, I've never seen you more calm in a match. Like I have just cold blooded, just this. I seriously, and I think that this year is if it's gonna happen, I think it might happen this year, but there's a lot of people who are all kind of being bred to go toe to toe with Alex Damon, And I would love to pick your brain on this rookie class of, it's all Dragon Con, Dragon Con, Dragon Con, Dragon Con, Dragon Con, Dragon Con, Dragon Con. How are you feeling about this rookie class? Is there do you think that there might be a short sight? Because I feel like there might be an assumption that, this person gave Alex a hard time in Dragon Con, therefore they're going to be a sure shot here. And there might be some people who are overlooking kind of like the rock, paper, scissors nature of things with this kind of sport, that just because they could beat Alex in Dragon Con doesn't mean necessarily they can beat him here, or vice versa. That, there's a competitor who can beat Damon, but they can't beat another competitor, and that things are going to get a lot more rock, paper, scissorsy as things go on, that there are certain matches that go a different direction, and that comparing sheer numbers may not be enough. In short, like how is the rookie class? What are your initial feelings on them in the Star Wars division, of course?
I mean, definitely more intimidating than any year before. I think that the Dragon Con thing is kind of a wild card for me, because I can kind of see how, like, you might come in overconfident and not really like prepare enough to, especially if you're not taking on Alex Damon. If you're taking on anyone else, maybe you would, underestimate your opponent. But in terms of playing in the Dragon Con people, I'm not really nervous about it. I'm pretty confident in my game at this point. I would not do well at Dragon Con. I know that for a fact at this point, just because I don't get into all of the canon material. The fact that they do, I sometimes wonder if that might leave one a little flooded in terms of information. But maybe that's not the case. So I honestly, it's just a wild card for me at this point. Like, I think that I'm kind of the one that I'm anticipating the most is Thomas Harper, but I sort of wonder if that might be an error on my part, because I just don't know enough about the other two that came out of Dragon Con, or however many there were. So I would be curious to sort of, they're the ones I'm probably the most curious to see, but I think getting to watch Thomas play is the thing I'm most excited to see.
I think there's a lot of people that are going to make for some interesting trivia. I think that's another interesting thing, and I think it's one of the what you were saying about the being flooded with information. Again, those who don't play commentate, so I could be dead wrong with this assertion, but we've talked a lot on this show about how, in my opinion, the best Star Wars players are the ones who, even though the trivia is limited to the movies, there is an extra canon knowledge that goes a very long way. That just because, this novel, this comic, whatever, isn't what you're being asked about, that does not mean that it has not, by virtue, taught you something that you would learn otherwise. And I think, in my opinion at least, that the Dragon Con people are going to be kind of showing how effective that strategy is of not just relying on movie knowledge. And I think it's one of the things that makes a competitor like you or Ken, back whenever he was still playing, or Joseph or Molly, very, very, very potent. Stuff like the name of Han and Chewie's ship whenever they weren't in the Falcon, which I can never remember how to say it. That's not said in the movies. You need to have picked up the visual dictionary. You need to have read prequel comics, stuff like that. How much has extra canon material aided you in gameplay? Like stuff that goes beyond just straight up, this is in the text of the movie explicitly.
Probably less than you'd think.
Yeah.
So, because just so much of it just is like straight out of the movies. But I think when it comes to like extra canon material, like I read the novels, and that's kind of the biggest, I think that's the biggest help for me, at least when it comes to like driving things home of like, oh, what's the name of that alien they just mentioned? And then you look it up and you're like, oh, that's the same thing as Kit Fisto. Like that kind of stuff really kind of helps to drive that stuff home. So I totally get that. I think also being a content creator sort of helps in that sense because I'm constantly talking about Star Wars and I'm constantly having to stay on top of new release books, like not so much comics because that's just not as of interest to me. But any news that comes out, like I'm in the weeds on a lot of this stuff a lot, and talking about it on my show for 1-2 hours every other week. So I think that's a big help with it too. And that's the whole reason Alex started his channel was to prepare for Dragon Con and get to know all of that, the sort of deep in the weeds trivia information. So I think that kind of thing is a big help too. Like just actually like speaking about it out loud is a really helpful thing to have. Not that you absolutely need it to be successful in this division, but it certainly helps.
Absolutely. And like I said, that's the kind of insight you only get whenever you're talking to a player. Laura, do you have any final thoughts going into the rest of the season? Any messages for your potential next opponent? I know that you're in a very interesting circumstance that makes for good TV, as it were. I will say, all biases on the table. I haven't made a secret about it. I feel like there's at least 3 to 4 different Korruption logos on my screen right now. I haven't hidden which faction I support and align with. And again, feel free to shoot this question out of the air, just as I thought of it now. Are you at all worried about a path back to Shannon Korruption? Because I feel like, eyes on the prize, once you get that belt, I think it's really hard to trade you back. Again, feel free to shoot that out of the air. That just popped into my head, and that thought process occurred to me. Is there a motive to maybe hope that you can just push off this championship as long as you can, hoping for a trade or
I mean, in terms of like floating from place to place, I can't say anything at this point. But at this point, I'm sort of hoping that the match happens sooner rather than later, just because I'm studied up. That's really my only motivation there.
All right. Well, Laura, where can the lovely people find you and all of the amazing work you do in the Star Wars space?
Sure. You can come find me on Twitter. I am at shutup_Laura. And I co host a show with John Roca on his channel. That's every other Wednesday. It's called The Jedi Way, where we just kind of talk about usually a sort of big picture Star Wars topic, and have a discussion on that. Every other episode or so is live. So join us for those on Wednesday evenings. And then Force Toast, a Star Wars happy hour, is the audio podcast I do with my friend Alice, where we drink wine and talk about Star Wars, usually what's in the news. And a lot of times we'll recap whatever is playing on screen or whatever book we're reading. So yeah, find that at forcetoastpod.com. There's a list of all the places you can find that show.
Both shows absolutely phenomenal. I wonder, I always wonder like the pipeline from people who listen to your shows who then start watching the Schmodown because they're a fan of your podcasting work, and then vice versa. People who go, oh, damn, she's a heavy hitter, holy shit, and then gets into your other stuff. I always wonder what that pipeline looks like because I was into both at the same time before you started playing. So I'm curious, it's like who found you who found you where rather. But absolutely, I've said it 1,000 times. I think I comment on like every single Jedi Way episode that it is some of the best Star Wars content out there, both Force Toast and Jedi Way. So it's always an honor to have you on either of the shows. Obviously, we've had you on Knights of the Nerd Republic a couple times. So yeah, thank you so very much for coming on, everybody. If you're not watching and listening to what Laura's doing, I don't know what the hell you're doing. Get it together. If you're a Star Wars person, you should be listening to all her stuff. You guys can find me on Twitter and Instagram at DarkJedi2552, and you can find the Nerd Academy podcast on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and YouTube. And you can, I was trying to thought. And if you were feeling ever so generous, you can check out our Patreon. Speaking of our $10 patrons, thank you to Casey Brion, the Waffle Wizard, Delta 9, and Zach Knaus. You guys help us make the content we love to produce. Be sure to take a look at the $5 tier, where you get access to our Knights of the Nerd Republic Versus series. In about 30, 40 minutes, I'm recording the March episode with Spencer. We're doing Kyle Katarn versus Darth Malgus. Check out Heroic History 101, where Travis and I are going to be reviewing Sam Wilson, Captain America, Volume 1, Not My Captain America, to end Black History Month, and also herald in the Falcon and the Winter Soldier series. And be sure to check out the audio commentaries that are also exclusive to the $5 tier that tie in with the Nerd Academy Movie Club. Check out the other shows in the network. I keep pointing in the wrong direction. Check out everything Laura's doing. Again, thank you so very much for being on. This was an absolute blast, and good luck, and may the Force be with you for your future endeavors.
Thank you, Jarod. My pleasure.
All righty. Thank you all so very much for listening. And Number One Contender still doesn't have an outro.